Welcome to our channel, a place where the most emotional family stories come alive, reminding us of love, sacrifice, and the unspoken bonds that shape who we are. Today, we bring you a deeply moving story titled Father's Hands, Stories Hidden in Every Scar. It is a story about a son who learns that every scar on his father's hands carries a hidden chapter of sacrifice, pain, and unconditional love. In a quiet town in the Midwest, there lived a boy named David. David grew up in a modest home on the edge of town. His father, John, was not a man of many words, but his hands told stories no one else could. Thick, scarred, and weathered, they were a stark contrast to the soft, polished hands of David's friends' fathers, men who worked in offices, wore suits, and carried leather briefcases. John, on the other hand, carried the marks of hard labor. As a child, David often felt embarrassed by his father's appearance. He dreaded school events where his father would show up in his dusty work boots, calloused palms, and cracked fingernails. The other kids whispered and sometimes giggled, pointing at John's rough hands. David wished more than once that his father looked more like the dads he saw on TV, clean, strong, and untouched by hardship. But John's hands carried stories David would only begin to understand years later. There was the long scar across his thumb from the night John stayed up splitting firewood during a freezing winter storm so his family would not go cold. There were burns on his fingers, reminders of countless hours spent welding in noisy factories to bring home just enough money to pay the bills. Each mark, each scar was a testimony of survival, of love, of sacrifice. Yet young David saw only imperfection. One summer, when David was around 12, tragedy struck. John fell from scaffolding while working on a construction site. The accident crushed 2 of his fingers and left deep scars across his palms. David remembered rushing to the hospital, the smell of antiseptic filling the air, and seeing his father's hands wrapped in layers of white bandages. For the first time, he held his father's hand tightly, not caring how rough it felt. He realized, in that sterile hospital room, that those hands had always been holding him up, feeding him, protecting him, guiding him. Years passed. David grew, graduated from high school, and eventually left for college in another state. He studied engineering, determined to escape the small-town struggles his father had endured. But every time he returned home, he noticed his father's hands had grown rougher, weaker, and more bent with time. Yet John never complained. He never asked for recognition. His love was quiet, expressed only in the work of his hands and the sacrifices etched into his skin. The turning point came during David's college graduation. After receiving his diploma, he looked into the crowd and saw his father standing there, clapping with those same battered hands. Tears welled in David's eyes. He invited his father onto the stage, took the microphone, and said, "These hands may not look like much, but they built my life. Every scar, every wound, every mark on them is a piece of me. Without these hands, I would not be here today." The auditorium fell silent, then erupted in applause. For the first time, David was not ashamed of his father's hands. He was proud. Life continued. David built a successful career and eventually had a family of his own. Yet every time he held his newborn daughter, he thought of John's hands. He noticed the tiny dimples in her soft fingers and wondered how one day her hands would also tell a story. Hands hold, build, comfort, and protect. And in John's case, they sacrificed everything for his son. When John grew older and his strength began to fade, David often sat beside him, holding those same hands he once avoided. The scars were still there, but they had become symbols of resilience, courage, and unspoken love. David finally understood. Love does not always come wrapped in gentle words or tender gestures. Sometimes, love is written in scars, in hands that have carried the weight of a family, day after day, year after year. The lesson is simple yet profound. Never be ashamed of the sacrifices your parents have made. Every wrinkle, every scar, every callus tells a story of love and endurance. The hands that raised you are the hands that shaped your world. And those stories, hidden in every scar, are worth more than any treasure. Thank you for listening to this touching story about a father's hands. If this story reminded you of your own parents' sacrifices, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next heartfelt story. See you in the next video.